welcome to the dungeon with Harlan and Andrew.
All right. Hi, hello. We are here. Our audio is on. We're rolling. It's happening.
I'm so distrustful. I feel I have a hard time believing it.
Hello. Welcome to the dungeon. This is
All right.
a
Hi, hello.
We are
talk
here.
show where we
our audio
discuss
is
all
on.
things
We're rolling.
tabletop
It's
role-playing
happening.
games. We discuss the art of mastering,
I have a hard time
game
believing
mastering.
So, hello.
Welcome. Oh, music's
welcome.
also on.
Welcome to the
Whoa,
dungeon.
what's
This
the
is
music? All right.
a
Hi, hello.
We are
talk
here.
show where we
our audio is on.
Is it happening?
We're rolling.
Tabletop
It's
role-playing
happening.
games.
We have a
discuss
new
the art of
soundtrack.
mastering,
Game mastering.
So,
Hold on. Hello.
Let me figure this out.
Welcome.
Sorry,
I
knew that audio was too good.
I know.
We are
Talk
here.
show where we
our audio is
what's
on.
happening.
We're rolling.
Tabletop role-playing games.
We have a new soundtrack.
Game mastering. Hold on. Hello.
Let me figure this out.
Welcome.
Sorry,
I
knew that audio was too good.
I know.
We are
Talk
here.
show where
I gotta figure out because
on.
otherwise it's just going to be happening.
Tabletop role-playing games.
Yeah, we have a new soundtrack.
Game mastering. Hold on. Hello.
Let me figure this out.
Welcome.
Sorry,
I
knew that audio was too good.
I know. Okay, now
I gotta figure out because otherwise it's just going to be happening.
Tabletop role-playing games.
I gotta
Game mastering. Hold on. Hello.
Let me figure this out.
Welcome.
Sorry,
I
knew that audio was too good.
I know. Okay, now
I gotta figure out because otherwise it's just going to happen.
Tabletop role-playing games.
I got
Hold on. Hello.
welcome.
I know.
No.
I got it. I know what happened. My Twitch was unmuted, but it's not in my headphones, so it was just like going and going and going. Okay.
Like an infinity
Yep,
loop, a
yep.
terrifying
Yes,
like
truly.
mirror inside of a mirror.
Yep. They just got infinity looped. Okay. Very fun.
man.
Very fun.
I knew it.
Too good to be true.
Happy
All right.
to be on the
that,
Infinity Loop episode.
Yeah.
I knew that audio all
Trapped
clear
here
was
forever now. That's great.
That was a fun.
great.
We actually
Good
got
company.
more viewers from that too. I don't know how, but we
stuck
did.
in the
So
audio zone. Yeah.
okay, let's do this one more time. Hello, everyone. All right, hold on. Ready? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the dungeon. This is a talk show where we discuss all things TTRPG, tabletop role-playing games. We discuss the art of mastering, game mastering. I'm Harlan Kelly.
And I'm Andrew Wardell, and with us today we have a very special guest, Game Master Jason Wardell.
Hi.
Please welcome to the show. Jason was actually my first ever DM, the person who introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons. So
I
Yes.
love that.
glad we finally got him on the show.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to be here, guys.
Sorry for the the infinity loop of metal.
We're here. We're
Love
going.
it.
Yeah, but I'm so excited to like meet the person who introed Andrew to DMing because Andrew and I met through D&D. Like we didn't know
Right.
each other beforehand, and it's been
That's
such
right.
a joy playing with him, and it's been like a fun thing. And we had the one show that Andrew was not here for. We had the person who introduced me to tabletop role-playing games on the show. So I'm happy to kind of like complete this loop and
Just
also
loop
to
it all together,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Infinity Loop episode. Here we are. We're right here.
Feedback loops. Yeah, there we are.
Time ripples.
So yeah, thanks
love
for
it.
being here.
Yeah.
Oh,
totally.
absolutely. I'm honored. I've watched a bunch of episodes, and I really love the format. Love tabletop role playing, and I love hearing people's experiences with it. So I'm looking forward to it. I dug out a die.
You're
so
ready.
You're so
I
on
like
it.
to
I
think
love
that
it.
I'm prepared as I ever am for D&D.
Well, then you'll know
love it.
our first question is usually, what is your
Yes.
history with tabletop role-playing games?
Oh gosh, it goes back to I'd say probably high school. I did not play D&D or anything or any traditional role-playing games in high school. I played a lot of board games. a lot of video games, and D&D and the role-playing games always seemed like just a step out of reach. They seemed like a little bit too intense. Something that like I was interested in for sure. Andrew, I listened to your Grolic Saves the World episode not too long ago about D&D, and you talk about sitting in It's Your Move, and I have very, very similar experiences with that. I would go to It's Your Move every time I was at the South Glen Mall.
Yeah, that was my mall.
That's so cute.
Yeah,
That's so cute.
That's
amazing.
Little connections there. Or Southwest Plaza, because every one of those had an It's Your Move.
Totally.
The prime day of gaming when every mall had a game store, right? But I would like just lurk by the tabletop role playing games and just kind of like open a book, peek inside, be like, this is fascinating, this is cool. I'm not ready. I found a copy of, it was like an AD&D Diablo themed box set.
Oh, fun.
I would have been like 14 maybe, and I just bought it, and I took it to a friend's house. I'm like, we're gonna play this, man. We're gonna play D&D finally. And we open it up, and I tried to do like a Deckard Cain voice very briefly. I was like, welcome, listen. And then he laughs at me, and I'm like, cool, we're not playing this anymore.
Oh, no.
And so I don't really touch D&D again until after high school. I had some friends from high school invite me to a game after I'd moved to Fort Collins. I drive back down every weekend, and we roll up a 3.0 characters, and we just play this pretty rote like dungeon crawl stuff. But I was so into it, and I just looked forward to that every single week, just getting in and just like delving the dungeons.
Yeah.
It wasn't until a bit later, until like 4th edition, that I started DMing. The 4th edition demo stuff came out, and none of my friends wanted to run a game, and I was like, well, I want to play a game in this, so how about I just run it? And it just clicked, and from then on I haven't really been able to play in a game because I just enjoy DMing so much that anytime and that's not true, like I certainly have friends who run games that are great.
Yeah, I played a game with you. It was great. Your character was very cool.
Thank you.
Lucky.
Yeah, Lucky. And don't call him Lucky.
Sorry.
Don't call him Lucky. No. He introduced himself as Lucky, but he didn't like to be called Lucky because he was a real complicated person, I guess.
But I get that instinct of like kind of once you start tinkering inside the world, it takes a level of like, I don't know, like trust is a wrong word because it seems like you're being high and mighty about it, but it's just like, I mean, you once you develop on what you like and what kind of games you like to play, I think it's good for people to be exposed to other things, totally. But it's also when you kind of get stuck inside a certain decision of like, okay, we're gonna be playing this type of game. I find myself just like trying to backseat DM, and I don't want to do that. Like I want to, you know.
Sure, I like knowing what's happening 3 continents over in my game, like at all times. Like I want to know like what is actually happening, and playing a game, I'm like, oh, there's something happening here. I can feel it, but I don't know what it is. Yeah. And something about that just drives me crazy.
Yeah, and which
it also drives my character to kind of like go and explore more. But
right, exactly. Yeah, that's I really love giving players a reason to take what they are feeling in real life about the game and like giving them a reason to apply that to their characters. You know, if you're someone who gets frustrated by the discussion around kicking in a door, or like strategizing going into a room, be a character that wants to kick in doors. You know, like if you feel that drive,
that 100% of the time.
Be a diplomat in a game or whatever. That's advice I like give myself as I too am trying to like unwind that coil in my brain and play more. So
yeah, I mean, like if you feel like you're getting lost, maybe do you want to draw the map? That's fun.
Yeah, I love that. I just started playing
like that.
A text-based game because I just like don't have time right now to run more games, but there's
no capacity for any more games.
I mean, I really have had to have time. I was running 4 weekly games for like a couple of weeks, and it was just like, okay, I need to scale this back. But I specifically tried to do that because I had that experience, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make someone who wants to solve mysteries, and that's like their whole thing. And so anytime I see like little stuff, I can like chase after it, even if it's like dumb and bad. And
Making bad decisions for the purposes of roleplay is always fun. It's always fantastic. Yeah,
truly my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, I was running a bunch of games for a while too, and somebody warned me. All of our mutual friend Aaron Uris was like, "Oh, don't get burned out." And in my head, I was like, "I could never get burned out of this. Like, it's so fun, and I love doing it." But it did start to overwhelm me, where I was like, I don't know if I would describe it as being burned out, but it became this like different kind of stress of like, oh shit, I got to do this, I got to do that, like. Am I letting my characters down by not like devoting my entire emotion to them? I was like, maybe the quality of my games is slipping a bit because I'm just not able to put in the same amount of like prep and thought. But I was wondering if either of you have any like tips for avoiding that sort of burnout. One thing that I started doing was just having more chill like RP game sessions where it's like, I'm not even gonna come up with an agenda for this. I'm just gonna like see what the characters want to do and basically just freestyle the game from that point. And that kind of helped because if I throw some of those in every so often, it can kind of reset everything, something like that. I was just wondering if either of you have any like strategies with that.
Honestly, I don't think I've ever run more than like 2 games concurrently. Also, and it depends on who's watching, I saw a couple people like my post on Twitter. My friends will know that I have the tendency to be like a really terrible flake when it comes to running a game. Just like it's easy for me to like get overwhelmed with it and get in my head about it and be like, sorry, I need to just shed something, and it cuts me to the inside. So that's probably not the answer you're looking for. You don't want to be a flick about your games and just like, nah, who cares?
But also, you have a new baby. You could like, you can get out of anything. Yeah. When you have a baby, you can get out of any plan.
But that's
have any excuse, yeah.
That's one of my favorite DM tips I've ever gotten was if you don't feel up to running a game, don't play the game. Like, don't run the game.
And that's true. Like, don't half-ass it. Like, don't show up for a game that you're going to feel bad about, your players aren't going to enjoy. Probably better to just say like, let's give it another week. Give me a second to come up with something.
Especially if you're running weekly games, just like take a week off, or even if it's 2 weeks, just like it's okay to skip and it's okay to miss, and even if it feels weird getting back in there, I'm just a huge advocate of like, don't force yourself to play if you're in a bad space, because that's the kind of burnout that will get you to like not start new games or like just be or just like suck to hang out with at the table. You know what I mean? Like, so just give yourself that space. And because I've had players do it, like I canceled the last month of the week because I just wasn't feeling good, and I've had players do it too. And maybe it's just the friend group, but I don't think it's just these people. That most of the time people are like, yeah, absolutely, do what you need to do, like. Go for it, and then come back to it with that same energy. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. I find myself getting burnout. Not like never outside of the game. It's like I will be in the middle of a session, and just being like, "Damn, I am not." Like I'm like I kind of like start to like dissociate or something. I'm just like, this is not hitting.
You kind of just hit that wall, and it's just not. It's not flowing the way that it was.
Yeah, and then I just like spiral after.
I've had that. So I've had that happen too. Yeah, it's almost like akin to bombing as a comedian, where it's like, oh no, I started telling this either story or joke, and I'm not even like halfway through, and I know
it's not going to land.
They're not. Yeah, it's just like the things aren't. It does not feel great. But I've definitely had that experience running games too. Yeah, I don't know what the trick is there. I mean, I guess just see if it swings back up. I don't know.
I think the difference is like in a game like that, like we're all in it together, myself and the players, you and your players. Like it's all of our responsibility to make sure that the game's a fun time for everybody else, right? I feel like in all of my games, at least, I try to have that as a spoken or unspoken contract that, like, we're here to have fun. Like, anybody who's kind of, like, playing against that isn't going to have a good time here because we're here to, like, lift each other up. So even in the situations where, like, I as DM might be lagging, I feel like my players have oftentimes, like, kind of, like, stepped in a little bit more, like, oh, hey, did I hear that, like, XYZ was happening? And I can be like, yeah, absolutely, you heard that. That's a fantastic idea. Why wouldn't that have always been the case?
Yeah, because cool. It's a myth that the DM is telling the story by themselves. You know, I mean, because
absolutely
true, you are this player, you are the world, and everything else. But like, I've tried to be very open with most of the people I play with too. That like, if you're not enjoying what we're doing, if the party isn't enjoying what you're doing, you can truly just stop doing it. Like in game or out of game. Like it doesn't matter. Like if we go through halfway through a big dungeon and you guys are like, pfft, like let's just not do it. Like it's okay. You know, we can retcon things or whatever. But so yeah, I
that's a great lead into a question I had for both of you. And I don't know if this has come up in your games. Do you have any system or strategy for like troubling content, triggering content, anything like that? Have you ever developed or implemented a system as to how to broach that stuff in a game?
Honestly, I try to keep my games so light and fluffy, and try to leave all of the agency in the hands of my players to like make those decisions. Like if they want to go and do something troubling, like I'll feel it out at the table. Like if it seems like other people are into it, then like, okay, like heads up, like this might not be, this doesn't sound fun, but if you're into it, I mean, I don't know. I'm making it sound like so euphemistic, and when I'm actually talking about like, oh my God, you guys might go kill somebody. Oh no. I don't have much of a stomach for like the more hardcore content that like some people might in role playing. Like this is, for me at least, it's a big escape from the shitty world that we're all existing in a little bit. Yeah. And so like why would we want to go do like more of the same that we already have? I want to go tell a fun story and help them tell a fun story. So I haven't really run into something where somebody is like pitching content or I'm pitching content that I feel like is like, we need to be careful about this subject because it's difficult and it's real world troubling.
Well, okay, let me ask you this then. What about like negative consequences? You know, I think that is the thing I've run into where I think there's a difference between like sure, we're not going to all go like burn down this clown factory and, you know, or like whatever, I don't know. Like, you know, I'm trying to think of like goofy triggers and then like violent triggers too. Sure. And clown triggers are not goofy. It's fine. That's not the point. But, you know, outside of that realm, like I had an encounter just like go really poorly with a party. And I was like, honestly, I mean, maybe it's my job as a DM to like find some more failure states and not like let them succeed, but just like find different ways out of this. But also sometimes I'm just like, yeah, the bad thing happened. Like, I don't know. I struggle with that. Do you have any like experience with that or?
I mean, sometimes the bad thing has to happen to the players, but you can always like roll with it, you know? Yeah. Like make that be an impetus for like the next plot point. Like I think about one of my first games playing, running as a dungeon master was a 4th edition game. It was my own world, and they had like gotten themselves in league with like this really shady like Rakshasa underboss who is like just playing them, and they couldn't figure it out. And then he was like pulling different disguises and they never knew that it was him. But they kept going along with it. And I was like, okay, like, and then it would happen. And I'd have to tell them like what they just let themselves get sold into, essentially. Mm-hmm. Is just being more like mob underlings when they were ostensibly like good characters. And that made for a more interesting story because like they failed. They failed all of their checks to figure that out. And so, well, maybe failure is fun because we can roll their bad. I mean, it was a combination of bad decisions and bad rolls. But then that made it more of a job for me to make it like, we need to still make this game fun. we need to still make this an interesting story that you all want to be telling. My games are super improvisational. I tend to have like a very loose script written for like the entire arc and for the world. Like I understand what's happening in the world, but for like an individual session, like if it goes wrong, like I'm ready for it to go wrong because I don't know what right looks like.
Yeah, that's good. I love that.
Totally. Do we actually have a question about that? I know we usually save the questions for the end, but
do it. That's
hey,
perfect.
We can break from tradition. We have a question in chat. How much improv versus planning do you do for a session? And you kind of just answered that.
It's mostly improv. I pick up where we left off the time before. I know where the characters are in the world and kind of what their goals are. If it's like they're in the city ship Gargantua and they're going to go attack an aboleth that lives beneath the city ship. Like I know that ahead of time, but like between start and finish, like what that means, I'm pretty much making it up as I go. Aside from like, I like having a handful of tables on hand for like, what might you run into? What sort of complications might you experience? I tend to know the NPCs ahead of time, like who's around.
Yeah.
And what sort of like adversaries might be between them and their goal. So I can pepper those in as necessary. But otherwise they're like, ooh, I'm looking for a hidden passage. And there might be one there might not be. I was like, well, cool, roll it. And they roll really well. Like, oh my gosh, you found a hidden passage.
just freestyle a hidden passage.
And that's more fun for me. I know you spoke with, I feel bad. I can't remember the guy's name. There was somebody else. I think Harlan, it was your first DM.
Ted.
To do a lot of
Ted.
Ted.
Yeah.
Ted said that he did a lot of the same stuff. Like just kind of like winging it, like understanding I like to think that I understand the rules of my world well enough that I can make up decisions on the fly.
Yeah. And I think it was the hardest thing for me I'm not even close to mastering it. It's the hardest thing for me to balance in my brain still now, because even as I feel like I've gotten more experience under my belt with it, I think different games kind of like call for different amounts of it. Sure. For me at least. If you play with Ted, like Ted's always gonna be in that same boat that you're in, where you're like, here's the loose structure, but like whatever can happen. Like I'm not sure, I don't know who like the shopkeepers are or whatever, but I find with myself, I approach every game so differently with different players that and depending how frequently it is as well too. And so some of them I'm just like, I have way too much. And some of them I just like, I can fly into any day of the week. And so I think it's for especially for like any new DMs out there, I feel like we get asked this here and there by people who are like, I do at least, like, I'm getting into it, but I don't know what the balance is here, or like I don't know how to prep for this first session. There's not a right answer. Like it's just totally. I think it's whatever makes you feel comfortable rolling in to playing the game.
Totally. And absolutely, the more you improv. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say, like, for my early sessions, that's how I learned how to do it. Is like I had the script, I had like the diagram, I knew what was behind every single door in every single building of the city. And then the players botched a handful of rolls and went off into the other direction. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do now. So I'm gonna have to just come up with something so this stays fun for us.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, those were when I started DMing, those panicky moments of like, oh, I didn't think that they'd want to find this. They'd be like, we want to find a tavern nearby, and I'd be like, oh god, I didn't think that they would. I just thought they wanted to go on the adventure. So yeah, it's kind of just a trial by fire where you just kind of develop that. I think some of my favorite games have been mostly improvised, where maybe it's like the energy is like reciprocal, where it's like they don't necessarily know that I'm just like freewheeling it, but maybe their like energy feels a little more exciting than instead of like, you're on railroad tracks and I know exactly where you're going. Kind of a vibe like that. But,
because you're focusing on the players.
Yeah, they asked to open the door and you kind of flip through it like, oh, what's behind this door? Like, oh, it's written here. As opposed to like, I don't like looking things up if I don't have to.
Yeah.
If I can just say like, I know what what rough stats a kobold has. Like, I'm not going to pull up the kobold monster block to tell you who you're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's a testament to your skill as a DM and like experience as a DM too. And I think everyone has bits of DMing that start to like chisel away as things they can just do automatically. Like, and I think that comes to like everybody at different points too, of like, I felt like the other day on our game, I messed up the death rules, and it was like a huge thing. We were like, "Oh dang!"
Well,
but
you messed them up because I stridently told you that I knew the death rules. And so yeah, you messed them up because you were getting very bad information from someone posing like they knew what they were talking about. So don't be too hard.
No, I'm not being hard on myself. I'm just using this as an example of like I too am someone who's like, I don't want to stop and look this up. I will make a ruling and blah, blah, blah. But you're like, oh, okay, there's a time to look it up. And you're just like chiseling off little parts of your brain. Or now I'm like, I got the death rules down now. I will never like forget them. And like, I know how I rule them too now, like consistently too, because we've had this moment. So I think that having
that internal consistency is huge.
Yeah.
Because if you botch that with your players, then they're not going to trust you.
Or if they
kind of trust you a little bit.
Because if they meet a kobold and all of a sudden they have 65 hit points and 4 swords, right. It's like, oh, okay, this
isn't who I've seen before.
Yeah.
Totally. I think there's so many rules in D&D. I honestly think it's like a rotating system, like rule in, rule out. Because I've read the book front to back so many times. I've looked up so many rules. I've checked so many things. And then I'll just like forget something, or I'll be like, how do I not know this suddenly? It is like a kind of a funny, you just kind of have to like pick what's going to stick around in there. Like just last night with the spells, I was like, you can never cast 2 spells on the same turn. And then Aaron asked about it, and I had just looked it up, and I was like, oh yeah, you can. You can if the one spell's a bonus action and the other one's a cantrip. You could. I could have been casting 2 spells all the time, like in so many games. But I just, somehow I remembered it that you couldn't, and then that just became the rule. And then boom, last night, now I know better.
Right, which is why rules...
One of the few places where they complicate things.
Crazy. Yeah. It's crazy.
Which is why, like, you both don't... Like, the rules aren't important, and they are. You know what I mean? Like, it's just... Sure. It's the same... When it matters, it really does, and that's fine, but at the same time, you can just roll with stuff, so...
It's a framework.
Sometimes in a game, I'll just tell a player, like, let's just do it, but that is not canon for how we're doing the game, because we'll look it up afterward, but... For now,
and that's a good way to do it, to like keep the pace of everything moving, because you don't want to like hold on, everybody, we're going to dig into the dictionaries right now to figure out like,
because sometimes it can be
rules as written goes.
Game changing, where it's like whoops, just broke the game.
And sometimes it calls for that, like
I love a good time to like pause and be like, okay, this matters, let's stop
but if it's happening every turn, every session, even, that's way too much.
It's the dramatic moment. It's got to be in the dramatic moment.
Totally. All right, well, we have a roll table, Jason. As you know, if you want to roll that d20, we'll see what question we get.
Got a 6.
Ooh, 6.
Pull it up here. I have it. Oh, okay. We have asked this one before, but it was quite a while ago. I like this question. And maybe you already answered it because of what you were describing with the Rakshasa, but what's the most fiendish trap you've ever pulled on a party? And it could be something that you brewed up or something from a book.
It is the Rakshasa, to be sure. God, and the reason why I conjured that up is because I was listening to old episodes and I was like, ooh, I know the answer to that. So maybe I'll tell that story in a little bit more detail.
Do it.
Instead of trying to think of another one. So the Rakshasa was Lord Kyler of the Spire of Blue Stars.
Great name.
And he comes about because he lost some astral diamonds, just the most valuable currency that you can possibly throw. And I threw it at my players at first level. Just because what do you do when you have astral diamonds? Who's going to exchange that in your mud town? Like no one is going to be able to split that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I never thought to do that. Give players loot that they can't spend or do anything with.
So that in itself was kind of a crappy trick to play because they were really excited about it. Like,
that's not a crappy trick though. That's an adventure right there, just right there.
That was the point of it. That was my hook.
So good.
So Lord Kyler was overseeing the Spire of Blue Stars. That was kind of like a dragon, a historic dragon stronghold. And the players had been like kidnapped by him and were there, and the players fomented a rebellion between kind of like the lower castes in the Spire versus the dragons, and like the whole thing kind of like turned into a powder keg and exploded, and they were like booking it for an airship to get off of the Spire before everything came crashing down around them, and they picked this half elf to be their guide to the airship docks. It was Lord Kyler.
So fun.
And Lord Kyler, I don't do voices for my games as much as I should, but Lord Kyler kind of had the voice of hedonism bot from Futurama, like a little bit like that. But he was suppressing that, and they couldn't get past his deception checks to figure out who he was. So it's like, oh, this half elf is being really, really generous and is doing great, taking us to the airship. And one of the players, or all of the players, discovered on this airship it had kind of like an extra dimensional door, kind of like a bag of holding sort of door where they could all hide while the airship was crashing to avoid dying, essentially. And one of the players was like, I'm gonna stand and guard the door so Kyler can't get in, because we know he's gonna try to get in here, and we know he's gonna try to escape. And he's like,
already in the ship with him.
He's already in there. And like to the last second, and then the other players like burst the door up and pull him inside so he doesn't, because he was ready to sacrifice his life for the cause, which would have made me feel worse, but I was going to let it happen. But the other players are like, no way, we're not letting you die for this. Like, he's not here. He's not going to come. And then they all like survive the crash, and they're in this extra dimensional plane, and then they're kind of like catching their breath. They're like, that was crazy. And then and the half elf turns to, oh, hello. And they all and that was the end of the session. And they kind of like drop their sheets, drop their pencils. They're like, you asshole. Like,
that's so good. Yeah.
Those are some of the most fun moments as a DM when a character who's not what they appear to be are full. You can tell that the party's fully embracing. Like I had a game of Alien where the party was very afraid of things that were going on in this community. I'll try to tell this as fast as possible. But anyway, they wanted to leave. They were like, this place is fucked up and dangerous. We want to leave. And so this groundskeeper who'd been driving around, who seemed like a huge idiot, was actually an assassin, like undercover, who was the person sent to kill all of them. But he came off as this very corn-fed rube. So when he dropped him off at the train station, they were like, will you stay with us till the train arrives? And I was just like,
yes,
yes, I will stay.
That's kind of cute.
I will stay with you till the train arrives.
So good. I love those. And that's the beauty of like being able to do some of like the improv stuff that you're talking about too, is that like players more than anything will just deliver you the moment. And it doesn't have to be trickery like that too. It can just be like, I'm so excited for this to happen, or like, I can't wait for this, or like, man, I don't like this, or what, just like whatever it is. If you just sit there and listen long enough as a DM, they'll just give you the whole story. Ideas. Yeah, truly. It's all right there. Yeah.
Totally. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Jason. Jason has if I can plug this, a D&D zine that I have a copy of called The Bird of Passage. Can people still find this? Is this something that, and you take submissions, right?
I do take submissions for it. It is at my website, jasonhwardell.com. There should be a post toward the top about The Bird of Passage. It was intended to be a quarterly zine of just kind of like adventure hooks. I haven't been able to play as much D&D or run as much D&D recently as I'd like. I recently moved to Ohio from Denver, so I kind of like lost my base of dudes. So like I as a way to kind of like fill that gap, I've been writing a lot. So yeah, I think if you go to my website, at least by the time that people see this after the Twitch stream, there should be a post toward the top of jasonhwardell.com about the Bird of Passage and where you can find it and how you can submit to it.
That's awesome.
Someone in chat says to ask you about your dragon synth. Your dragon synth.
Please tell us what that is. I want to know what it is so bad.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that I've been doing lately. I recently joined a game over Roll20 with some friends, and I have been live scoring it with synthesizers. So I play a ranger, a Kenku ranger, should be a bard, I guess, but a pretty low stakes character. I'm kind of quiet. I'm kind of on the outskirts, but in between, I have my synthesizer hooked up through my sound card. So I'm playing like little dungeon synth tunes as we go through, and we're exploring the Underdark right now.
Cool. Well, you're invited to every game I play in from now on. So
let's talk. Awesome. Let's talk. Yeah. That's something that I've been eager to expand upon.
Cool.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. You're seeing it right here, chat. The start of the next little bit of soundtracking right here.
Is there anything else that you'd like to plug?
No. Haven't really. No.
All right.
Cool. Well, yeah. Thanks so much.
As probably a lot of people know, Harlan and I, we have a Spelljammer-inspired D&D game that happens right here on this channel, Monday nights. If you want to check that out, that's every week, called Better Than Heroes.
Yeah, check it out. And also, a thing we haven't reminded people in a while is we've been pulling a lot of different folks on this stream for this show, but we love kind of like trying to get outside of our bubble. So if you're listening to this at any point in time, and you know someone who inspired you to DM, or that is a DM and likes talking about Dungeons and Dragons, send them our way.
Doesn't even have to be D&D. It could be any game. They don't have to be actively running one. If you just know that they have run them and they have perspectives on it, send them over.
Andrew and I have talked about everything to death to each other, so we're just looking for new thoughts. Yeah, exactly. So send them our way. Tweet at us, whatever you need to do. Get them over here. But
totally.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. This has been fun.
Thanks so much for tuning in.
Harlan, Andrew, thank you for having me. Been a lot of fun.
And don't forget, tip your DM.
Yeah. I just tipped Harlan today.
You did? All right. See ya.